Hello and welcome back to the Imperfect Question. I'm going out for a ride if you'd like to join me to have a chat. But before that, I need to tell you about some unexpected misfortunes that we had on the farm the other day.
You look so beautiful, and I'm so lucky to be yours. And you're taking me high. Ain't nobody like you. I'm not coming down. Ain't nobody like you. I could go 1,000 miles as long as I'm with you. Yeah, you're taking me high. Ain't nobody like you.
Storm Darrah is set to bring a very unsettled weekend with heavy outbreaks of rain and also some very strong winds. There are multiple Met Office warnings issued, including a red warning for western parts of Wales.
Yes, Storm Darrah arrived and brought total chaos with it. As you can see, we woke up to the garden where the bins had been trashed and tables had been tipped over. There was litter everywhere. The poor goats had their gates ripped off and the roof had come off their little pen a little bit as well. Down the field, the sheep shelter had been turned into a flat pack like we'd bought it from IKEA and been tossed against the fence, but the sheep on the plus side did look like they'd been washed and blow dried. That was a bonus. The horses were staying well away from all the action and hiding against a hedge, which gave them a little bit of shelter, as you can see. On the yard, barriers had been toppled over and most equipment had been thrown around the yard somewhere or another. The electric fencing was a bit wild and all over the place and blocked the horses from getting through some areas and let them in some areas that they shouldn't be. The horses did manage to make it up to the yard, but as you can see, their manes and tails and even the coats were getting blown around all over the place. They did so desperately want to go inside and eat the hay that was there, but as you'll see in a minute, it's quite clanky with the barn and that, so they didn't really want to stay in that well, and it was a challenge for them. They did manage to get a few mouthfuls here and there, but unfortunately every time they tried, they got scared by banging and had to evacuate again. Unfortunately, the barn did receive a lot of damage. As you can see, we lost huge sections of the roof, which did blow over the road. And inside as well, this part came off and my husband had to climb a ladder to screw it back down to make sure it didn't fly away as well, because this is the part where the horses actually are. The next day, the winds were still very strong but had died down considerably from the day before. I had tried to bring the horses out the previous day onto the neighbouring pasture where there would be plenty of grass for them to eat and it was a bit more free of any buildings with flying parts, but I hadn't been able to walk up the field because the winds had been so strong, so I'd had to abandon the idea until this day. But as you can see, they're quite happy out there at this time. Come join me on a ride a few days later. Welcome to our ride today. We're on a different lane. You can see that we're going to be encountering some of the storm damage. You saw what it did to our barn and our farm. Good girl. It's just a broken tree. Good girl. JJ can see some differences on the lane that she hasn't seen before, so she's a little bit more wary. Good girl. Yes, I know, twigs and trees. It's okay, good girl. Walk on. Good girl. So I'm just letting her take a look, taking my time, letting her have a second to think about it. I know it is still branches and twigs, but obviously with them being snapped, you can see the different colours, and also there's some on the floor that weren't there before. She's just quite wary of what's going on. She's a bit familiar with this lane. We do it a few times, so obviously anything that looks slightly different to a horse, they really notice the difference. I think some of the trees have been tidied up already so people can get around. We're now actually, let's see, what are we? Probably 2 days after the storm now. It lasted all of Saturday, much longer than they thought. Good girl. You can hear her just trying to relax mentally there. Little bit of a blow up. Hopefully we'll get a bit more of one in a minute. Good girl. Walk on. It's okay. I know, look. It looks different, doesn't it? Yes. Good girl, walk on. Good girl. Well done. So if I thought she was having too much trouble getting past something, I would maybe keep her facing it a bit more as she went past, or we might go away from it and come back to it. There's another tree leaning in the road a bit here, and a lot of twigs missing off this hedge on the left, all been snapped off in the wind. There we are, darling. Good girl. Walk on. Walk on. Good girl. There we go. Well done. She's walking on slightly better now that we've got past the initial ones. So I think she's figuring out that it's just how it is after the storm. We haven't really got any trees down at home, so she hasn't seen any like that. Shortly we'll be coming up to a field that's usually got quite a few dogs running around it, so I don't know if she remembers that or not. She may have a little spook at that as we go by. We'll have to see when we get there. You can hear her blowing out again, relaxing much more into our ride now. It's a lovely quiet day compared to the other day. Obviously when the winds were whipping it was quite scary, and especially when the barn started coming apart and it was all banging. Horses really didn't like it at all. I've let them have the last couple of days out on the neighbour's bit of land. Walk on. Good girl. Oh, we can hear something. Maybe it's a squirrel. I see it, it's a squirrel. It's just making some crunching as it goes through the leaves. Good girl. Just sounded like someone walking or something, but it just went up a tree. So we're coming up to the field where there's often dogs in. I don't see any out at the moment. Good girl. I think she does remember though. Walk on. Actually, it was only the other day that I realised, oh, there is a dog in the field. Whether it comes up, we'll see. That this is actually an animal sanctuary. So the dogs are around, but they've also got goats and, I don't know, pigs and things like that, I think it said. I saw it on Facebook. They were looking for somebody to help out at the sanctuary. I can actually see some goats down in their field. JJ is going to have a look as we go past. Yeah, JJ. They're right down the bottom, so I doubt you can see them from there. Walk on. Good girl. Now there's a load of pigeons flapping. She's quite perceptive today, I would say. Walk on. Ooh, good girl. It's been quite dark all day, but it's not too late yet. We've still got a bit of time till the sun sets. Should be just enough time for a ride. Oddly enough, this is another one that's about the same distance as the ride we did the other day, even though it's a different direction. She's not usually one much for trotting away from home, but we might give it a go, see how much it takes. So, come on. Not too much. I thought it might take a little bit more. Good girl. She's going, there's a tree there that looks a bit odd. Just wait till we get past it. Good girl. Well done. You take a good look. Good girl. Oh, there's another one ahead, but still we'll give it another go. Ready? Good girl. We might stop again at this next tree that's come down. There's a couple down here, but we'll see. At least she's only stopping and having a look. Yeah, stopped again. Good girl. Good girl. She says, how peculiar. Oh, and a tractor as well. There's been a few muck spreaders going around. Not so bad today, but yesterday it was still quite windy and I couldn't see there was much purpose to try and spread muck in heavy winds, but never mind. Just imagine it flying about 3 fields down. Now here there's a little triangle that goes on a loop around. So we do a loop around this triangle and then we head back home. It's not a massive ride. Good girl. Walk on. Got a bit breezy at the crossroads so she can smell things from all directions, so she's just having a bit of a sniff. I'll ask her again to let's set off. Come on. Good girl. Oh, little bit of objection. She'd rather turn around and go home there, but we'll carry on. Good girl. There we go. No, no, no. Walk on. Walk on. Good girl. There we go. Good girl. Good girl. Well done. There we go. Walk on. It's a big old lorry coming. I wonder if it's coming down this way. If it is, I think we're going to turn around. Let's see, is it coming this way? Yep, it is. Okay, we'll go back. So it's not because she can't go past it, it's just because the opening is way too narrow for a lorry and her. You can see it's filling up right to the verges, and if you look at the verges here, they're really quite narrow. He'd be brushing her sides going past her. We're going to trot a little. She can feel a little bit of pressure from in behind because it's coming up a bit too fast. So she's speeding up. He really shouldn't come up like that behind us, but we'll just wait a minute here and face him as he goes past. Okay. Come that way or this way? Okay. We'll get that way. Oh. Good girl, over here. Walk on. Woo. Woo. Walk on. Walk on. Walk on. Good girl. Are you going down that way? Oh, that way, okay. I thought it was coming down this road, but I got it wrong. Face her towards it. There we are. There we go. Good girl. Well, he was patient in the end, even though he did speed up a little bit behind us on the lane. Good girl. Good girl, well done. Walk on. Obviously, we've been in such a narrow lane, there was a lot of sound reverberating now, so she's a little bit unkeen to go back into that lane. Walk on. Walk on. Good girl. Good girl. Let's try the other way. We'll go the other way then. There we go. Walk on. Good girl. Good girl. Yay, good girl. Well done. Well done, you. Well done. Okay. Walk on again. Good girl. Walk on. Good girl. So she had a little chop from some adrenaline there from the lorry. Best for her to move it out and get it out of the system when she can. Hopefully we'll see a blowout in a short while as she relaxes down again. Oh, she nearly did then. I can feel her starting to relax slightly more in her body as we go. There's a good girl. The more she moves, the more she's freeing up the tension. There we go, well done. If it had been wider down that lane, I'd have either just pulled over to the side or I'd have got off and stood with her, but because it was so narrow it was going to be dangerous, so that's why we went back with the lorry. Good girl, walk on. Good girl, walk on. Good girl. So I thought whilst we were out today we might have another little story time, and I thought I'd tell you about another childhood story with horses. When I had Foxy, who I've mentioned before, who was my first owned horse, and he was a horse because he was 15 hands or 15.1, I think it was 15 hands high. My friend had at the same time her pony 14.2, who was called Max. And Max was an ex-polo pony. Now, so he was kind of thoroughbred looking, very fast. He had a little bit of a Roman nose. He was Palomino, but his white bits were never that white. No matter how much you washed them, they always had like a slight kind of yellowy tinge. So I don't know if it was more like a yellow and cream rather than a yellow and white, but you know, that's how it was. And whenever I took Foxy out, or even when I had Breeze before him, she would come out with me on Max and we'd go everywhere together. He was a really good pony, really solid. You could take him anywhere, any traffic. We'd all go cantering around together. It was all great. So I got to ride Max on one occasion because Max was quite picky about who rode him and quite a sensitive horse. And I didn't really realise how sensitive he was until I got a chance to ride him and found out. So what happened was she let me have a go, and almost immediately that I sat down and got my feet in the stirrups, he started cantering really, really fast. It's getting a bit windy, so hold on, we'll get out the wind a bit. There's a lot of crosswind on this section here. I'm sure if I talk too much to you at the minute, then you won't hear me. There we go. So as soon as I sat down on him, he started cantering really, really fast. And luckily, we were in quite a small paddock. So I was basically doing laps of this small paddock, probably about twice the size of an arena, this paddock, at very high speed, almost getting to a gallop. And they're screaming at me, "Take your legs off him." Now, I wasn't applying any pressure that I was aware of, but my legs were rested just down to the side of him. And for Max, this was way too much pressure. That's better. Out the wind a bit more now. So I was screaming back at them, "I haven't got my legs on him." And they kept screaming back, you have. And it's just getting faster and faster. And at one point, he literally was pulling me towards a 5-bar gate. And he's perfectly capable of jumping. So everybody was really quite terrified that he was going to jump over there. And I thought he was as well. But just before we got there, it was at that point that I realised I literally had to lift my legs away from his side. At that point, he started to let me slow him down. And we turned a couple of smaller circles. And we were fine. And I got off him. And they were like, yeah, I don't think you should get back on him again. And only Emma rode him from then onwards. But that was a bit of an experience. But he was a fun pony anyway, and Emma would often take him along to lots of show jumping competitions where I think she did quite well, really. He was a great pony for her in her teenage years. So another story I've got about Max is one day when we were coming back from a ride, we were going along and we were about 15 minutes away from the stables, and we weren't too far. You just had to go through a housing estate a little bit and then down a country lane and through a little bit more road, and that would be back down the stables. So we were outside a shop, and usually one of us would hold the horses whilst the other one went into the shop and bought stuff. So we did that, and then when Emma came back out, she held Max, and I forget what happened. She was either opening a packet or something, or putting a straw in a drink or something along those lines, and she for some reason just let go of the rein for literally about a second, and he took off down the road. Now, he had been standing perfectly still, absolutely solidly still, so why he suddenly decided that her letting go meant that he was going to run, we're not too sure, but he did, and we were absolutely terrified because he's running down a really busy main road. Literally, the area we were in was on the edge of a town, so you can imagine it's still very, very busy with cars and things then. Good girl. Getting a little bit worried about this tree again now. So what I did was I jumped on my horse Foxy, and I decided to gallop after him to try and grab his reins. Now, obviously, you should never gallop on a road surface, but we were absolutely terrified that Max was going to get hit by a car, so in my head this was the only solution to it. So I took off galloping to Max. Unfortunately, that meant that I did have to leave Emma behind, and she was left to walk back to the stables or run a little bit, and was absolutely panicked about what was happening to Max had he been hit by a car. So I was following Max at close gallop behind, but I couldn't quite get to the reins. He did fortunately remember the way home, because we were concerned that he might just completely bypass the estate and go off somewhere else completely different. In fact, there was an A road not too far away that he could have got to, and also really awkward junction with a railway section, but he fortunately did turn off down. Good girl, she's really relaxing now. He did turn off down the estate and head towards the stables, and actually he managed to make it back to the stables before I got anywhere near catching him. So Emma had been fortunately picked up by her mum, who'd been on the way to stables to bring us home and collect us after our ride. So she'd been brought down in tears, and she was very happy to see that Max was okay at the stables when she got back there. It was quite a relief for all of us. So the only bad thing that happened from it is, because you should never gallop your horse on a road, both horses got stress lines on their hooves, and fortunately Foxy, having nice strong cob hooves, did only just have to wait for them to grow out, and you could see there'd been a big event line there where they'd been under stress from galloping on a hard surface. And with Max though, he did need a little bit further action from the farrier, and I do remember them digging out lines on both hooves, which I'd never seen before, and putting some sort of substance in at that point, and again that had to wait till it grew out again. So we were kind of stuck without riding for a few well, it's quite a while. I can't remember, it must have been a few months after really to let that grow down, I suppose. But yeah, I remember us having a long time off riding after that. In general though, we didn't really have much problem. She's seen a picnic table or something like that in a field. We didn't really have much problem when we were riding around as children with our horses. Can't think of any obvious adventures at the moment to put to mind, but if I think of them, I will let you know in a future video. Just going to have a little trot back. So she always finds it easier travelling home, even though there's lots of wild things going on, like all these branches. And even though she passed them on the way down, don't forget that horses see differently with one eye to the other, so technically she's not seen it with that eye yet. Good girl. Good girl. I can feel she's starting to get tired. I'm on a slight upward incline, but I'd like her to try and keep going, because if you remember, we do want to try and do a bit more trotting for fitness. Oh, there, she's tired. I'll give her a second and we'll go again in a minute. And to be fair, it's good for my fitness as well. Lots of rising. And again. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl, keep trying. Good girl. Well done, well done. It's funny how adrenaline works with horses when it comes to their speed and life levels, isn't it? Because JJ's quite tired now after our little trot then, and they weren't too far away. But if she was to see something spooky now, you would feel her energy come up and she would be able to give me a good burst of energy again. So it's amazing how the body can pull in those reserves when it needs to. We're not too far now to the more main road that leads to home. I might try one more trot before we get there. Come. It's downhill now, so it should be a little easier. Good girl. Oh, you can do it, good girl. Oh, well, we got a little bit more there. Well done, JJ. So we're coming up to a bit of road now that comes to home again, and I have to decide, because usually get quite a bit of traffic passing through this way. It's actually one of the main routes, even though it's a small road, from some of the local villages through to the main town. So there's quite a few that come through here, and we get a lot of tractors and big lorries, because there's a lorry depot around the corner come past here. And often I'll get off and just walk her in hand around this section, but I think today I'm going to try and be brave. If I get too worried, I will be jumping off. Have to try and remember to unhook the air jacket first if I can, but we'll see. I think especially after that lorry down the lane that we incurred a bit ago, which was speeding up on her, got her a little bit worried. It might be good for us to try and see. And I mean, I say this and maybe we won't pass a single car, but who knows. This looks quite flat here, but it's only when you walk it yourself you realise it's a really gradual incline the whole way. You get to the far end and you're like, why am I getting out of breath? And you realise it's an incline. Even on the horses it looks really flat. It's not, I can promise you. You can see, luckily, oh, tripping over, we've had some new tarmac done. This was full of massive potholes down here. But yes, the council have been out recently on their latest budget and fixed the potholes with patches. Here we get a van to go past, good practice for us. Thank you. Good girl. There was a fraction of tension there, I suppose, because of the sound in the lane again, but she was very good. Like I said, we have done some really busy roads in the past, but she doesn't get to see traffic that often now. So, you know, especially when things are a little bit upsetting like the lorry, then we have to just be cautious and careful. Good girl. She's putting a bit more of a plod on because we're nearly home, but we're hitting a bit more of an incline, so that is slowing her down a bit as well. Our sheep are in this field here. Thank you. Good girl. Well done, JJ. Good girl. Well, we're nearly home now. We're just up at this junction up here. It is our house. So I hope you had a really nice ride with us again, and thank you for having a look at our storm damage and seeing what we'll cope with. I'm sure it'll all be fixed really soon.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye!